A young boy named Wutian woke up in a scenic forest. The soaring birds and falling leaves gave an unreal idyll to the place. A bright ray of sunlight made the boy open his blue eyes. Because of the sudden awakening, the young man did not immediately realize where he was. "Is this heaven?" Wutian exclaimed, amazed by the unreal beauty around him. Gradually, a memory of a recent scientific experiment came to his mind. "I seem to have died by doing the experiment," summarized the guy mentally. After that, Wutian came to the conclusion that his life was boring. The monotonous lying down gradually became boring to him, and he stood up. Looking around, Wutian was not convinced that he was in paradise. He looked around at the ordinary nature, a meadow with a lot of weeds. A sharp noise made Wutian wary. He noticed a cute girl, Wan, who was quickly approaching. The girl was wearing sports sneakers, socks, and shorts. Wutian didn't understand the girl's fussiness. In reality, the young girl was desperately looking for a toilet to relieve herself. Gradually, the bladder began to press unbearably, causing Wan to switch to fast running, which further surprised the young lad. Wutian still in the back of his mind, hoping that he was surrounded by the Garden of Eden. That being said, he immediately noticed the peculiarity of Wan's outfit. In his mind, he immediately recalled that this was how girls dressed a couple decades ago. Wan decided to stop searching for the toilet as the urges were becoming intolerable. Looking around, the girl didn't see any people around. She decided to relieve herself right here, away from prying eyes. "I have to do it," Wan decided. The girl didn't realize that a guy named Wutian was watching her actions. "What the hell? What is this girl doing?" So silently he shrieked. The girl's overexposed, exhausted bladder emptied its entire contents. It was like the words of an ancient proverb that says a clear stream flows eastward, and the stars in the sky pay homage to the big bear. The guy watching Wan experienced a whole range of feelings at the same time. He was numb, unable to move, or even look away. Gradually, a stream of urine from Wan began to flow towards the startled Wutian. The guy let out a restrained and startled cry of surprise. Surprisingly, the urine scared Wutian. "Shit! What? Is it going to kill me?" That's what the shocked guy thought. "I have to hide as soon as possible," he decided, making frantic attempts to quickly jump to his feet. The boy's attention was suddenly attracted by a sharp, extraneous sound. He heard a suspicious and alarming hiss, along with the murmur of urine.
The hissing could be heard very close by, with the girl squatting next to the tree. Wutian frantically and tenaciously looked in front of him to see the source of the hissing.
Lightning fast, the head of a dangerous snake appeared from behind the bushes. It was a cobra, for it had a recognizable hood around its head. The snake quickly jumped out from behind the bushes and started heading towards the girl. Wan continued to squat, not even aware of the mortal danger that threatened her. Wutian only had time to shout, "Be careful! Poisonous snake!" The guy was sweating in terror, wanting to protect the girl somehow. At the same time, the cobra had already crawled close to the girl. The sound of the stranger's voice made Wan extremely scared. She was completely sure that she was alone in this part of the forest. "What? Who? Is there someone here?" She only managed to shout out. Her face was colored with a grimace of shock and fear. At the same time, the snake attacked the defenseless victim, lightning fast biting the girl's buttock. Wan came to a frozen horror. The shock of hearing the voice and the incomprehensible pain of the unexpected bite mixed together. At the same moment, the girl decided to flee. She jumped to her feet, but she couldn't hold on to her sneakers and fell down. When the girl fell, the snake had already crawled away. A still shocked Wutian was watching all of this. He stood there, and there was no way he would be able to help Wan. In intense fear during the fall, the girl was only able to give a short shriek. Watching what was happening, Wutian couldn't even utter words. What had happened was beyond his comprehension. The guy saw Wan falling, but because of the confusion and surprise, he couldn't help her in any way. All that happened frightened some of the forest dwellers. The noise and shrieks frightened the birds, causing them to fly sharply into the sky. The girl's fall came next to Wutian. He too could not stay on his feet and collapsed on the ground. Gradually recovering from the shock, Wutian sensed the girl's close presence. The fallen Wan could only say hurt. Everything that had happened had shaken her badly. Wutian and Wan looked at each other for a few moments. Their gazes were filled with surprise and confusion. Suddenly, the girl slapped Wutian hard. She thought the guy was intentionally watching her. "Who are you?" Only managed to ineffectually ask and shouted out the guy. Taking advantage of the guy's confusion, Wan started beating him with her fists. Wutian had a strange thought in his head that he had been beaten out of nowhere. Then the thought came into the guy's head that everything that had happened to him could be an ill-fated love affair, or even a favorable occasion for a good acquaintance. The few inhabitants of the forest watched what was happening on the ground. Even the bird in the nest stopped singing because of what they saw. Wutian quickly realized that he had to save the situation. He jumped to his feet and said, "Miss, I really didn't have any bad intentions. It was just an accident," was how he explained everything that had happened. "I am not a bad person," Wutian continued to say persuasively. But his words had little effect on the girl. Her gaze continued to glow with disbelief and surprise. Here Li Wan abruptly interrupted the guy with words, "Would a bad person call himself a bad person?" Wutian continued to reassure the girl with persuasive words where he described how a poisonous snake had stealthily crept up on the girl. But the girl did not think of giving up. She asked sharply, "What happened before that snake appeared? What were you doing there? Why are you here?" Wutian couldn't answer clearly. He was completely confused. He explained to the girl that he was not in the forest to watch her pee. Li Wan was not relenting. She couldn't understand that Wutian could have happened to be nearby when the snake appeared. "You're a pervert," she kept telling the guy. Suddenly the girl's endless swearing and accusations were silenced as she felt sick. "I feel so dizzy," was all she could manage to say in a faint voice. Wutian said, "This is the poison taking effect." The guy wanted to help the girl, but she waved him away, although the strength was gradually leaving Li Wan. "Don't! Stay away!" shouted the girl to the guy. Li Wan felt worse and worse. She only had time to utter another accusation. "You just peeked at me writing, and now you're saying..." Wutian got a chance to speak and informed the girl, "The venom of this snake is very strong. I must help you get rid of it." The guy was in full determination to save the girl. The poisoning continued to affect Li Wan's body. She could no longer speak much and clearly. "Your life is at stake. If you continue like this, you will die." Wutian continued to persuade her like this. The girl's last quiet words were, "I don't want a pervert like you to help me." The young man watched Li Wan's strength leave Li Wan with obvious anxiety. The effect of the poison had reached a critical point in the girl's body. She could no longer stand. Her legs gave out. Losing consciousness, Li Wan fell into the arms of the dazed and agitated Wutian. In a brief moment, the lad exclaimed only again, remembering that not long ago the two of them and the girl were already lying on the ground. Suddenly there was a sharp noise and rustling of leaves from outside. It sounded as if an adult was walking through the forest. The silhouette of an old man appeared in the distance. The old man's silhouette appeared in the distance, and it was obvious from his appearance that he was very excited and preoccupied. Gradually approaching, the old man began to shout, "Granddaughter! Granddaughter, where are you? Let's go home with Grandpa." He gradually approached. He was carrying a large knife called a machete. This weapon helped the old man clean through the impregnable thickets. At the same moment, Li Wan was lying on the ground and Wutian was trying to bring her to her senses. This was exactly what the girl's grandfather saw. The old man was immensely amazed to find his granddaughter in the woods in the arms of a strange young man. The grandfather was filled with surprise and anger. Grandpa was still in great shock at what he had seen. He couldn't believe what he had witnessed. The bastard. He could only squeeze out his words to Wutian. The boy noticed the machete in the old man's hands and realized that he had to act immediately. "Wait!" shouted Wutian to the grandfather. At the same time, the young man kept trying to bring the girl to her senses, shaking her and shouting, "Hey, wake up!" The old man's anger was at its peak. He lunged at the boy with a machete, shouting, "How dare you molest my granddaughter? I'll beat you to death, you son of a bitch!" With all his efforts, Wutian was able to dodge and catch the machete blade between his palms. This saved the young man's life. Wutian did not give up trying to reason with the angry old man. "No, I didn't mean to do that. I'm serious. You better stop now or your granddaughter will die." Li Wan woke up just in time. Through the veil, she saw her new acquaintance lying on the ground. At the same time, her grandfather did not give up trying to attack the young man with a machete. "Eh? Grandfather," her granddaughter weakly said. "Grandpa, I'm so cold." Li Wan gradually came to her senses. The waking girl caught the attention of the grandfather and the young boy. They stopped fighting and turned toward her. "Granddaughter!" the dumbfounded old man could only say. The old man ran up to his granddaughter, who was still lying on the ground. "What happened to you? Don't scare Grandpa." Wutian realized that he needed to act immediately. He realized the severity of the girl's condition and shouted, "Not good." While the grandfather was confused, the boy resolutely rushed towards Li Wan. What was happening shocked the old man. Wutian began to unceremoniously undress the already semi-conscious girl. Grandpa's feelings changed from anger to stupefaction. Then he felt shame and shock as he watched the boy. The old man could hardly believe the reality of what was happening. "Asshole! What are you doing?" Wutian continued to unceremoniously undress the girl, replying at the same time to Grandpa taking off her pants. The old man could not believe his eyes. He was stunned, not knowing what to do. He was speechless with shock and anger. The boy gradually got over himself and realized that he should immediately explain everything to his grandfather. "Old man, I don't mind if you cut me, but right now we need to think of a way to save your granddaughter." Wutian spoke so calmly and clearly. Grandpa gradually came to his senses and listened to the young man's words. "She was bitten by a snake. It's a poisonous cobra. If we don't hurry, she will die." The guy further explained his actions. "I must suck out the snake's venom as quickly as possible." The boy's words increasingly shocked the grandfather and pissed him off. He couldn't even say a word in anger. Here the old man realized everything and decided to act on his own. "If anyone's going to suck out the poison, it's going to be me. Step aside." So decisively the old man answered the young man. "Here." Wutian even cheered up a little. He said to his grandfather in a lenient manner, "I'll let you suck it. By the way, the bite point is her butt." Such an answer slightly embarrassed the old man. The option of sucking poison out of his granddaughter's butt completely confused the already shocked grandfather. Wutian continued to speak. "Old man, are you sure you want to suck it out of your granddaughter's buttocks? Aren't you afraid that once your granddaughter finds out what you did, it will be too difficult for her to move on with her life?" Grandpa even turned away, thinking about what was going on. The old man wanted to say something intelligible, but his thoughts were jumbled in his head. He only said quietly, This. Taking advantage of Grandpa's confusion, the guy decided to take the initiative. Wutian said, "What, no more aces up your sleeve? Move aside." The young man started to approach the girl, but the old man grabbed him firmly. "Wait! Don't touch my granddaughter's ass," that's what Grandpa said. Wutian pretended to agree with the old man. The young man spoke in a low voice. "All right, then you do it. But what if it leaves a scar on your granddaughter's heart?" The old man stopped and thought hard. He was digesting only two possible options to save his granddaughter. The grandfather decided to give the initiative to the young boy. Grandpa turned around and said, "Maybe it would be better if you did it." This turn caused Wutian to be slightly confused. Meanwhile, the snake venom was penetrating deeper and deeper into the girl's body. The arguments between the boy and the old man were taking up the time so valuable for the rescue. Wutian thought, "I can still save her. Just a little more and we will lose her." The harsh reality of his granddaughter's possible imminent demise continued to deeply disturb the old man. Here the young man gathered his thoughts and realized, even with my medical background, I've never sucked poison out of an ass. The old man immediately realized that the boy was the only one who could save his granddaughter. The old man said conciliatory words. "Young man, I beg you. I have only one granddaughter." To increase Wutian's determination, he calmed himself down and thought, "Okay, this is important. Saving people's lives." There was no other way out. The young man resolutely, without hesitation, began to suck out the poison from the girl's ass. Li Wan herself remained unconscious at the same time. After sucking a small amount of poison, the guy spat it out to the side. He repeated this behavior several times. Grandfather watched with anxiety and tension. His anger had already faded. The old man had resigned himself to the fact that the only way to save his granddaughter was to suck out the poison. In the end, the guy managed to suck the poison blood from the girl's body. But there was still a long way to complete healing. Wutian said to his grandfather, "Old man, go and gather these herbs. Lobelia Chinese lemongrass, rhizomes, coptis, Chinese lemongrass, golden cypress, scorchion, slender Chinese pipe, Rihum rabargau, Prunella vulgaris. All of these can be found in the mountains." The old man listened attentively, then answered, "These herbs. I don't know any of them." The young lad realized that he would have to do everything himself. "Forget it then. I'll go and gather them myself." The search for medicinal herbs was not a quick one. Wutian spent at least 3 hours searching for healing potions. Once back, the young man set about preparing the medicinal herbs he had found. The young girl was still unconscious. The snake venom poisoning had seriously exhausted Li Wan. All the herbal treatment that was going on interested the grandfather. He approached and asked the young man, "Are you really a doctor?" The guy was sitting and resting at that time. Then Wutian replied to Grandpa, "Are you suspicious of me? If you don't believe me, I can stop helping her." The girl at this time was still lying on the ground unconscious and motionless. The old man immediately hurriedly excused himself. "No, I was just asking." The grandfather's look showed that he had full faith in the boy's abilities. For his part, Wutian also decided to reassure his grandfather. The young man said, "Don't worry. I don't take people's lives lightly." The exhausted old man decided to thank the guy and said, "Well, thank you." Then an important question came into Wutian's mind. If it wasn't for the shocking snake incident, Perhaps the guy would have voiced his question earlier, but he could only gather his thoughts now. Old man. Ye Wuqian began to speak. What year is it? The boy asked quite seriously. You and your granddaughter are wearing very old clothes. They are two styles from decades ago. The old man was as surprised by such a question as he was by everything that had happened before. As strange as it was to the grandfather, he decided to answer the young man simply and clearly. He began to say, now, 2019. Such was the end of Grandpa's phrase. This simple information shocked Ye Wuqian. With a slurred tongue, he only had time to ask what? The old man's answer made Ye Wuqian forget everything. He simply couldn't believe his ears, believing that there was a mistake after all. Eh? What did you say? What year is it? The shocked boy asked again. For the grandfather, Ye Wuqian's surprised state was incomprehensible. The old man couldn't understand why the phrase about the current year 2019 had put the young man in such a state. It's the current year of 20. Is there some kind of problem? Why don't we go to my house and check the calendar? The excited guy even grabbed the surprised old man by the shoulders. The boy got over himself and agreed to his grandfather's proposal. Let's go. Let's go to your house and check the calendar. Ye Wuqian practically grabbed his grandfather by the scruff of the neck and prepared to rush to the old man's house. Stop, the grandfather replied sharply. My granddaughter is still lying there with her bare ass. Don't forget about her. The young man no longer heard his grandfather's words. They came together to the house where the old man and his granddaughter lived. Without delay, they went inside. They brought the unconscious Li Wan with them. Ye Wuqian looked at the ordinary tear-off calendar. On the page, he clearly saw the 5th day of 20. There was no longer any doubt in his mind. The young boy was still standing in front of the calendar, unable to take his eyes away. Now, isn't it 2089? Asked Ye Wuqian confusedly. The grandfather silently watched the young man's mental anguish from the sidelines. How is it 2019 now? For the 100th time, the guy asked. How did it even happen? He was perplexed. Ye Wuqian was still looking at the calendar. Then, suddenly, a mirror caught the boy's attention. It was hanging next to the calendar. There was a comb on the shelf next to the mirror. Ye Wuqian went to the mirror and saw his reflection there. He was shocked to see himself. Is that me? The guy asked, barely moving his lips. The reflection in the mirror mirrored his movements exactly. Apparently the guy didn't like his youthful appearance. Shit. Where's my omega chin? My beautiful mole? Where's my peak of beauty? Why did they all disappear? The old man looked at Ye Wuqian with bewilderment and incomprehension. Why are young people nowadays so narcissistic? The grandfather asked rhetorically.
Old man, suddenly a guy said sharply and clearly. Who is the leader of the alliance now? The young man continued to ask.
Grandfather staggered at the question he didn't understand. What kind of leader? What are you talking about? Already more irritated, the old man asked. Putting his hands behind his back, he began to explain everything to the boy. This is a Huaxia country, and there are many neighboring countries too. My country, Ying country. But I've never heard of any alliance. That's how he summarized it. Huaxia, Ye Wuqian thought. Some thoughts and conjectures flashed through his mind. Slowly, historical facts popped up in the guy's head. Before the alliance was formed, of course, they were all independent countries. Could it be that during the explosion my soul traveled through time? The guy wondered. And I traveled back decades? Ye Wuqian made a brief conclusion. Suddenly the old man and the young man were attracted by the girl's weakened voice. Grandfather, Li Wan said in a low voice. The girl's strength had already come and she pulled herself up on the bed. Grandfather. Iya. Li Wan was still unable to finish her sentence. Her hand frantically clutched at the sheet. The grandfather was moved to tears by the awakening of his granddaughter. Small tears of joy even appeared on the aged face. At last you are awake. Everything is fine now, so he comforted the girl. Li Wan perplexedly asked, What happened to me? Why am I at home? Aren't we chopping wood in the mountains? The girl naively clarified. The delighted grandfather began to tell his granddaughter about all the events of the previous day. My girl, I was very worried about you. You were bitten by a poisonous snake. Fortunately, this man saved you, the old man said, pointing to Ye Wuqian. The boy was extremely flattered by his grandfather's words. Ye Wuqian was pleased that the girl would think of him as a savior. Gradually coming to her senses, Li Wan saw the young guy and memories began to come back to her. Bastard! Pervert! The girl started shouting at the guy. The grandfather tried to calm the girl down. Granddaughter, don't be so rude to him, the old man said condescendingly. Grandpa's words couldn't calm the girl down. Why are you sticking up for him? she asked angrily. He looked up my butt, Li Wan added with disgust. Ye Wutian was beginning to be amused by this scene. The young man decided to talk to the girl personally. He approached his grandfather and said, "Let me explain to her," Ye Wutian added, turning to the old man. "The boiled medicinal herbs are almost ready. You can go and fetch them." Grandpa agreed with the young man. "Good. I'll go right now," the old man replied. He realized that a healing herbal decoction would help restore his granddaughter's health. After the old man left, Ye Wutian and Li Wan were left alone. The girl was still looking at the guy with horror and disgust. It was completely strange and incomprehensible for her to see a young man she hated next to her bed. Slowly, the girl decided to break the awkward silence. So, awkwardly, she began. "You helped me with this," she said, pointing to the bandaged wound on her buttock. The beginning of the communication pleased the boy. He began to respond eagerly. "Yes, I applied the medicine to your ass," Ye Wutian said with pleasure. Moving a little closer to the girl, Na continued to speak. "Besides, I also sucked out all the poison with my mouth. Are you satisfied now?" the boy asked in a friendly manner. The girl was embarrassed by such details. Li Wan looked at Ye Wutian with a steady gaze. Her gaze was a mixture of feelings. She couldn't understand why she liked this guy, even though she hated and even feared him at the same time. The guy was also looking at his interlocutor uninterruptedly. Ye Wutian was extremely satisfied that his efforts to save the girl had succeeded. The silence was interrupted by Li Wan's harsh voice. "Why did you do this to me? Who will marry me in the future now?" The girl felt offended. He frantically clutched at the sheet. To reassure Li Wan, the guy continued to explain the events that had happened to her. "I had to do it, unless you want your grandfather to help you suck out the poison." At this point, the girl hesitated. She hated the idea of Ye Wutian sucking poison out of her ass. But the thought that her own grandfather might have done it was more unpleasant to her. The guy suddenly remembered that he was in a different time dimension. "This is strange. Why am I suddenly traveling through time?" he thought. "The explosion in the lab could only take me a few meters. But how could it take me 70 years back?" Ye Wutian continued to ponder logically. The young man decided to give the girl a chance to rest. Turning around, he headed for the door. "You haven't fully recovered yet," he said as he walked. "Have a good rest," the boy wished Li Wan. What's your name?" the girl suddenly asked conciliatingly. Ye Wutian replied simply and unambiguously. The girl, meanwhile, remained lying on the bed. She was still unconsciously clutching the sheet in her hands. Li Wan was slightly surprised when she heard the young man's name. Ye Wutian, such an arrogant name, she thought. The girl decided to give her name as well. "My name is Li Wan. An understandable question arose in the girl's mind. "Ah, yes. What were you doing on that mountain? You don't look like someone from our village." Ye Wutian was already standing at the door but decided to answer. "I have no idea either. I just woke up there and heard the sounds of someone peeing." "So you saw everything?" Li Wan asked him sharply. Slightly amused, the girl continued to speak. No way. You said that you just woke up. So definitely you were still confused. There's no way you saw that." "Well, I always wake up very quickly," Ye Wutian replied. He liked to keep a conversation with the girl. No, don't joke like that. You're teasing me on purpose," the girl said with naive amusement. "You didn't really see anything, did you?" she finally asked. Ye Wutian decided to answer her frankly. "You mean when you were writing?" "I'm sorry, but I saw everything, and I saw everything quite clearly." Li Wan was shocked by such a simple answer from a guy. In the back of her mind, she had hoped until this moment that Ye Wutian hadn't seen when she was writing. The girl could no longer contain her anger and threw herself at the young man. "Pervert! I'll kill you!" she shouted at the boy. "Don't move or the wound will get worse," Ye Wutian replied worriedly.
"Ouch!" Li Wan shouted sharply and fell down. "My butt hurts so much," she added in a weak voice. The girl stretched out on the bed with a painful grimace.
Ye Wutian became agitated when he saw his new acquaintance fall. "I told you not to move so much," he said. The girl made attempts to stand up but was unable to do so because of the intense pain. "Ouch, ow, my butt," she continued to wail. Quite suddenly, the guy started undressing the lying Li Wan. He grabbed her buttock with his hands. "Pervert! What are you doing?" the girl screamed hysterically. "Don't move, I'll give you a massage to ease the pain." Ye Wutian began to explain his actions. "Don't," Li Wan replied sharply. The young man's idea was not to her liking. "You bastard! You filthy pervert!" she shouted. The girl wailed loudly. The sound of her voice echoed throughout the neighborhood. Then Grandpa came back into the room. He was holding a cup with fragrant herbal tea. "Young man, your medicine is ready." The old man noticed that his granddaughter was completely head over heels under the blanket. Grandpa didn't know what had happened before between Li Wan and Ye Wutian. Because of this, the old man said, "Foolish girl. Why are you hiding under the blanket? It's the middle of summer. Aren't you afraid of suffocating?" The girl's head peeked out from under the blanket. "From now on, I have nothing to do with that pervert. Until the day I die, I won't stop doing it." The grandfather did not understand everything that was happening. He decided to ask Ye Wutian for clarification. "Young man, what's wrong?" The boy was tired of standing. He sat down beside the table, putting both feet up. To the old man's question, he answered simply and directly. "Nothing. I just gave her a massage to ease the pain. Maybe she doesn't like having her pants washed off twice a day." This was Ye Wutian's opinion. To himself, he remembered the feeling of his hands touching the girl's legs. He thought, they are quite elastic. The feeling is not bad. The girl started shouting at Ye Wutian, "I'm warning you. If you dare to tell anyone, I, Li Waner, swear to the heavens that I will kill you." With that, the guy listened to the girl's screams without any emotion. Ye Wutian decided to respond in his own way to the girl's rudeness. "You're flat everywhere except your ass. I'm not interested in that." Here the young man turned to the grandfather standing next to him. "Old man, give her some medicine to drink." "I won't drink it," Li Wan replied sharply. "Who knows if it has poison in it," she suddenly said. Ye Wutian didn't know what to say to such a guess. The guy further decided not to waste any time. He took the cup from his grandfather's hands and started to offer it to the girl. Silly girl. Just listen to the doctor. Li Wan started to hide under the blanket again. The young man stood beside her and leisurely said, "I don't care if you die or stay alive. I'm only afraid that you'll ruin me." Ye Wutian medicine's reputation legend. The guy kept urging the girl to take the healing tea. "Now that I have saved you, you must stay alive." So he finished his speech. At this, Li Wan reacted to Ye Wutian's words without any confidence. A medical legend? Then I'm a medicine fairy. Let me tell you, I won't drink." Such a categorical refusal discouraged Ye Wutian. He was confused, not knowing what to say. "Indeed," replied the boy slyly. Then he added, "You don't want to take it verbally, but you want it applied externally." Ye Wutian entered the taste and started to further speak. It seems that the naked ass fairy was not pleasurable enough before. "Do you want me to check your injury again?" the guy suddenly suggested. Such words made the girl feel embarrassed and even blushed. Don't come any closer, don't come any closer, I'll drink," Li Wan finally agreed. With a sudden movement, the girl took the cup from Ye Wutian's hands. Such haste on the guy's part surprised him. "I'll drink it, okay," Li Wan confirmed. The pleasant taste of the healing herb soothed the girl. For some reason she thought, "God, you like taking my pants off so much. Pervert," the girl thought without anger. A grandfather came up and started to inquire about his granddaughter's condition. "Young man, my granddaughter's injury is not very severe, right?" Ye Wutian hurriedly consoled the old man. "It's not a big deal. She just needs some follow-up treatment." Then the boy decided to address the old man with an unexpected proposal. "I have nowhere to go now anyway," the young man began cautiously. Then he added, "Would you mind if I stayed here for a few days?" Grandpa willingly agreed to Ye Wutian's suggestion. "No problem. As long as you can cure my granddaughter, you can stay here as long as you want." And so ended this unusual day full of adventures. Night shrouded the village and the house where the grandfather and his granddaughter lived. This night, Li Wan slept very poorly and anxiously. The stress and events of the previous day had a strong impact on her weak and vulnerable psyche. In her dreams, she kept seeing Ye Wutian. "Dirty pervert," the girl whispered through her sleep. The dream made the girl's mind relive the adventures that had struck her again. She felt that Ye Wutian wanted to undress her again. Don't take off my shorts," the girl said through her sleep. Ye Wutian, unlike his new acquaintance, could not fall asleep. He lay with his eyes open and looked away. The boy hung his shirt up to dry. He himself lay on the bed without a blanket. Ye Wutian was worried about his current fate. It wasn't easy for a guy to accept his young appearance. If I really had traveled back in time, then who was the owner of this body? To concentrate, the young man scrutinizes his palm. According to Li Waner and her grandfather, I am not from this village. If that's the case, why did I wake up in a barren mountain? Furthermore, this body is very weak, probably due to too much alcohol and bodily pleasure. Here a sharp hunch struck the young man. Oh shit, too much alcohol and bodily pleasures, so he repeated to himself. Gradually, the guy's mind began to connect a logical chain. No wonder whenever I saw Li Waner, I felt aroused. It was all because of that body. Although I wasn't a virgin in the past, but I was definitely not that horny. Slowly, the thoughts took the guy further and further away. It can't be that I was reborn in the body of a super pervert. Could it be that the original owner of this body was killed, and the corpse was thrown into the barren mountains? This was Ye Wutian's fantasy. The guy made a clear and concise decision. Okay, I must clearly investigate the previous life of this body. With this decision, Ye Wutian fell asleep. The clear morning burst into the room where Ye Tian was sleeping, but it wasn't the rays of the sun that woke him up. "Old man Li, come out quickly." That's what the boy heard through his sleep. "We'll break in if you don't come out." Such shouts of strangers woke up the boy. He had not yet fully realized everything that was happening. "Damn it, it's early morning, let me sleep." Grandpa was already standing dressed in the street. He was surrounded by a group of people who clearly did not come with good intentions. "Old man Li!" "Don't say I didn't remind you. The 2-day deadline is expiring." The leader of the gang stood closest to Grandpa, holding a pipe in his hands. "Either give us our money back or give me that girl." That's how he specified his demands to his grandfather. "Old man Joe, what are you going to do bringing so many people here? Do you guys want to kidnap her?" the old man asked so angrily. Grandpa came right up to the Roo and started talking. "I told you I don't have any money yet. I won't give you my granddaughter to pay you back." "So categorically," replied the grandfather. Li Wan came to the window. She decided to put the people who came to rest. "Old man Ju, could you give us a little more time to pay off the debt? I promise you, as soon as we have the money, we will pay it back as soon as possible." A gang named Ju said to Li Wan, "Girl, Hu Zi will be your husband. You will be his wife. Ever since he was a child, he has been in love with you. He will be kind to you." Hu Zi turned out to be a big burly man with a gold chain around his neck. "Da Wan Er, I will be kind to you." That's what he said while looking intently at the girl. Hu Zi's words made the girl laugh. "Brother Hu Tzu, I've told you many times that I don't have such feelings for you. Please leave me alone." Ju said to Grandpa, "I already gave you a chance." Then Ye turned to his gang of henchmen and told them, "Break in and get Wan Er out. I'll make sure that she and Hu Zi get married today." The people who passed by were expressing more and more aggression. Hu Zi was especially happy. "Haha, Wan Er is finally mine," he said so joyfully. "Let's go." There was a shout from the crowd. Grandpa bravely stood up to defend his home. "Halt! As long as I'm here, I won't let anyone enter this door." The old man's appearance was full of determination. The old man decided to give a decisive fight to the gang of bandits. He boldly stepped forward with his arm out. The bandits encircled the old man. Hu Zi grabbed Grandpa by the scruff of the neck. "Old man, you better take care of yourself," Hu Zi said threateningly. Suddenly, the door of the house opened. Ye Wutian came out. The appearance of a strange guy surprised the whole gang. "Yi. What are you doing?" Ye Wutian asked sharply. The boy stood in the doorway. He looked sternly at everyone present. "I don't care what happened between you two before, but right now Li Wan Er is my patient." The crowd outside the house stared in amazement and silence at Ye Wutian. He continued to say, "No one can touch her until she recovers." Hu Zi was the first to come to his senses. "Who are you? What is your relationship with Wan Er?" he asked Ye Wutian angrily. At the same time, Ye Wutian did not show any signs of fear. "All you need to know is that Li Wan Er is injured. She is now my patient. Without my permission, no one can touch her." This was how the young man finished his speech. At the same time, Li Wan was watching from the window. The girl was struck by what was happening outside. Is this pervert trying to protect me? This is absolutely none of his business. Such thoughts swarmed in her head. Meanwhile, the conflict between Hu Zi and Ye Wutian continued to escalate. The big guy approached the guy and threatened him. "Damn, are you trying to scare me so badly? No one in this village will scare me." Hu Zi brought his fist to the young man's face. Ye Wutian wasn't afraid. "Do you want to fight? I see you're very brave." This was his reply to Hu Zi. The guy suddenly brought his palm to the big guy's face. Ye Wutian opened his palm. In it was a pile of earth. "Do you see this dust?" Ye Wutian asked cheerfully. "What?" Hu Zi stared at the palm of his hand with the pile of earth in confusion. He didn't understand Ye Wutian's actions. Suddenly, Ye Wutian blew on his palm. A pile of dust flew into the big guy's face. Hu Zi was not prepared for such a thing. While the tall man stood dumbfounded, Ye Wutian continued to speak. "I just want to tell you that dealing with you is as easy as blowing off this dust." "What the hell is this?" Hu Zi was furious. "Are you trying to do something to me?" he angrily asked the guy. Ye Wutian turned around and started to walk away. "Come here!" Hu Zi shouted angrily after him. The leader of the gang, named Ju, intervened. "Hu Zi, stop!" he shouted angrily at the big guy. Ju walked over to Ye Wutian and began to speak. "Boy, you're not from our village. Why are you protecting them? Do you like that girl too?" Shaky thought to himself. This guy is deliberately angering Huzi. He's wrong. Li Wan looked out of the window of the house. Ye Wutian immediately told her, I know what you want to say. Don't worry. I don't like this type of woman. The girl boiled up. Pervert. What do you mean? What kind of woman am I? Ye Wutian turned around to face Ju. So how much do they owe you? And why do you need such a big crowd? Joe decided to answer everything directly. That's 20,000. He named the exact amount to Ye Wutian. Such information infuriated the young man. What? 20,000, he asked again. Only 20,000 and you want to take his granddaughter. The guy stood in front of the crowd and started telling them, you are all from the same village and you are still bullying the old man and his granddaughter. Aren't you guys ashamed? The crowd was silent. It was then that Huzi suddenly spoke with anger. He was completely confident and unwavering in his intentions. Whatever it takes, he began. Waner will be mine, Huzi shouted and rushed towards Ye Wutian. The big guy wanted to beat up the young boy. Seeing all this, the girl became worried. Watch out, she shouted to Ye Wutian. That kind of concern touched the guy. Wow, I didn't think you'd be worried about me. At this time, the young man was standing by the window where Li Wan was looking out of. Who's worried about you? Dodge! Your body won't be able to withstand his punch! Huzi was already standing right next to the young man and raised his hand to strike. It was as if everything around him had frozen. People stood around in a daze, watching Huzi attacking the guy. Even the nature itself froze. It was the young girl who was most frightened. She was terrified because she was worried about the fate of the boy. The enraged Huzi prepared to attack Ye Wutian. The big guy's punch never reached Ye Wutian. Huzi's hand couldn't even touch the guy. Inexplicably, the exhausted big guy fell to his knees on the ground. He mumbled, What? What is it? I can't tense my arm. Ye Wutian turned around and firmly said, I said that dealing with you is as easy as blowing dust. The gang members surrounded Huzi, who was lying on the ground. Joe asked the stooped Huzi, Are you all right? Get up quickly. Apparently, the big guy didn't even have the strength to get up. He stood on his hands and knees and said, I can't get up, I can't tense my body. The crowd was greatly surprised at what was happening. There were shouts of, how did he suddenly fall down and can't get up? It must be that guy's doing it. That guy is too suspicious. It turned out that Mr. Ju was the apex Huzi's own grandfather. Mr. Ju ran up excitedly to Ye Wutian. What have you done to my grandson? Let him be normal again, or we won't let you go. That's when Li Wan's grandfather intervened. He turned to the young man. The old man timidly said, Young man, we are from the same village after all. Maybe you can The grandfather did not finish the sentence, but the boy guessed the old man's wish. Ye Wutian said. He stepped away from his grandfather and walked towards Huzi, who was lying down. The young man, like a wizard, brought his hand over the lying big man. This time I'll let you go. The big man's condition changed abruptly and unexpectedly. He felt his mobility begin to return. Strength returned to his arms and legs. I can move again, the big man said in surprise. He was able to get to his feet. The boy decided that the conflict was over. He turned around and started walking back to the house. Ye Wutian said to the crowd, Come back in 3 days for the money. And right now, get lost! The young man ended the conversation so briefly. The crowd looked at him with confusion and surprise. Hu Tzu said to his grandfather, Ju grandfather, What are we going to do? Don't tell me we're just going to leave it. Then the big man added, Yan is satisfied. Wan Er is mine. Grandpa Ju thought and said judiciously, This man is dangerous. We should never mess with him. There is a reason for everything. In 3 days we will demand the money. Let's see if he can raise 20,000 or not. Ju then turned to the crowd and said in a commanding voice, Leave! The gang obediently turned and began to disperse. They agreed with their leader's decision. The gang's departure made Li Wan happy. She happily looked out the window and said at last they were gone. The girl still couldn't believe that everything had ended so well. Just then, Ye Wutian suddenly walked into the girl's room. Hey, Waner, were you worried about me just now? The girl continued to still stare out the window. Li Wan's speech came back to her. He turned to the boy and said, No, I wasn't worried. I wish Brother Huzi had beaten you to a pulp. The boy's appearance showed no excitement. Ott replied calmly, Even if there are 10 guys like him, I can still give them a kick in the ass. Here, all of a sudden, Li Wan showed genuine surprise. Ah, yes. What just happened? Why did he suddenly fall down? Did you do something to him? Ye Wutian decided to explain everything. I'm a medical legend. This is nothing compared to what I can do. Then the boy remembered how he had prepared a healing potion from the herbs he had gathered in the forest that evening. He thought, fortunately, we gathered a lot of herbs yesterday. I turned them into different powders last night. Without them, we'd be in real trouble today. I must make more powder for the future. That's how the boy finally decided. This is when Li Wan decided to break the silence. "Ha, I don't believe you're that strong." The girl's words confused the boy. He thought, "Can't believe I'm considered a liar in this decade. It's sad." Just then, Wutian walked up to the girl closely and pointed his finger at her breasts. At the same time, he said, "By the way, not only can I cure anything, I can also make your boobs bigger. Are you interested?" The girl was dumbfounded by such an offer. The guy continued to stand next to the girl. She couldn't think of anything to say to him. In Li Wan's mind, there was resentment, shame, and anger towards Wutian at the same time. What? Did I say something bad?" Wutian asked like that. He saw that the girl was almost crying. Li Wan started to whimper. "They tease me at school. They call me the princess of the blackboard. And now you're also bullying me." Wutian was discouraged by the girl's reaction. The boy decided to make it up to Li Wan. "Don't cry," he said. "I'm telling the truth. I'm not making fun of you. I really can." Li Wan, still crying, replied, "It's okay, then help me do it." The girl fell silent and looked at Wutian with tears in her eyes. Li Wan suddenly unzipped her sports sweatshirt and shouted, "Wutian, can you make them bigger?" The idea of enlarging her breasts appealed to Li Wan. Such actions of the girl came as a surprise to Wutian. He did not take his eyes off her breasts. Such a reversal in the girl's behavior was incomprehensible to the guy. He looked at Li Wan, not knowing what to say to her. Wutian could only say, "Oh shit." Everything that was happening shocked him, but the guy didn't do anything. They parted in silence with the girl. Morning came, and the sun illuminated the house where the granddaughter and grandfather lived. Li Wan had to go to school that day. Walking out of the house, the girl thought, "Yesterday he said he could help me enlarge my breasts, but in the end he didn't do anything." Li Wan kept pondering Wutian's words yesterday. Could he really be doing this? What if he just wanted to take advantage of me? The school continued to mock Li Wan. "Look here. The bored princess is dreaming again. It is so flat that even an airplane can take off on it." The girl felt insulted. Li Wan came running home. Opening the door, she shrieked, "I don't want to be a plank princess. Help me enlarge my breasts." When Li Wan's words were heard by her grandfather, he was confused. A girl asked the old man, "Grandpa, why are you in his room?" The old man replied, "This guy went to gather herbs. During this time, I wanted to clean this room. Granddaughter, why are you talking about?" Here Li Wan impatiently decided to help the old man finish his sentence. Did she say breast augmentation? Li Wan was suddenly frightened by her own words. She suddenly turned around and started running away. What? I didn't say anything like that." Grandpa was surprised. He shouted after her, "Ah, granddaughter." Li Wan was running fast. She didn't look at her feet. Suddenly she tripped over a rock. While running, Li Wan saw Wutian walking towards her. "I'm back," said the guy just as Li Wan ran towards him and fell down. The collision with the girl caused the guy to fall and drop his bag of herbs. Lying on the ground, Wutian and Li Wan gradually came to their senses. The girl felt pain from where the snake had bitten her. "Ow, my butt!" the girl screamed in pain. Wutian immediately replied to her, "Hey, I told you to refrain from physical exertion." The guy got up and started walking over to the girl. "Now I'll have to get a massage again." The girl was taken aback by this suggestion. "What? Pervert, no, don't," screamed Li Wan. The guy still honored his offer and gave her a massage. Then Wutian went inside and started making another tea from a set of herbs. The girl lay on the bed, watching Wutian prepare a potion that could help her. "Pervert, scoundrel," Li Wan continued to say. Li Wan continued to prepare the potion nonchalantly. He said to the girl, "Your repeated insults make me tired." "Ah, yes. What type of seafood sells for the highest price?" Li Wan replied to him, "Reiki, obviously. Each of them is worth several hundred yuan." The boy continued to prepare the healing potion in the bowl. The girl's answer pleased him. "Oh, really? Then let's focus on catching crayfish." Grandpa came into the room unexpectedly. "Hey, kid, I brought what you asked for." Wutian turned to him. The old man placed a large straw jug in the center of the room. He asked the boy, "Are you sure you want this?" The guy liked the contents of the jug. "Yeah, exactly. That's exactly what we need." Wutian took a few swigs from the jug. He had obviously decided to cook something special. All the guy's actions aroused surprise and genuine interest in the girl and her grandfather. At last the potion was ready. The boy was satisfied. "Well," he said. "Let's go fishing," Wutian said. He took the straw jug and headed out. They all came to the seashore. There they threw a jug into the water. It was tied on a rope to a post on the shore. Underwater, the jug was in an open state. It was standing on the seabed. A guy and a girl sat on the shore. They were waiting. A good crayfish catching could bring them a big income. Wutian sat in silence. He was looking at Li Wan. The guy might have wanted to say something, but the right words weren't there. The girl was also silent. Various thoughts crossed her mind. For some reason, Li Wan began to think about the future tense where Ye Wutian came from. In the girl's mind, the guy was saying these words, "I really like girls like this, innocent and beautiful." The guy was remembering what girls from the future era might look like. Guy's mind was saying these words, "Unlike the girls I came from, filled with lust and violence." In comparison, Li Wan is pretty much a miniature angel. Maybe that's a heavenly angel for me. Then the voice of the grandfather was heard from afar. The old man ran and shouted, "Oh my God, we're rich, it's a miracle." Ye Wuqian and Li Wan turned around to their grandfather in surprise. "Grandpa? What happened?" Grandpa excitedly shouted, "Granddaughter, Ye Wutian, come quickly and look at this. Look how many crayfish have gathered on the shore." At the same time, equally interesting events were taking place in the Yinchuan building in the eastern city. On a high floor in her office sat a lonely female president of the company. The woman sat looking out the window. She had a view of the big city in front of her. Is he really dead? The woman wondered. Her gaze was fixed and detached. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door. The door was labeled Office of the General Manager. A secretary entered the office of the female director. She informed the director, "The bank has sent another notice." The female director turned around in her chair toward the secretary. She asked her subordinate, "Is it still about debt repayment?" The secretary replied, "Yes. Xiao Man, organize a dinner with President Zhu on my behalf." The headmistress's hand nervously clutched at the papers on the table. The secretary plucked up courage and said, "Madam President, Zhu is not a good person. Having lunch with him is like entering a tiger's den." The female director calmly remarked, "I know very well what kind of man he is. If it weren't for his interference, the company wouldn't be what it is. But what's the point of knowing his true colors, if we have no other choice at the moment?" The secretary still did not agree with her superior's proposal. She timidly objected, but the female director had already pointed out unequivocally and sharply, "Please organize this." At this time, in the Li family home of Li Wang and grandfather, life was going on as usual. They had a nice seafood dinner. Grandpa also served a dish of crayfish that he had caught earlier. The old man thanked the young man. "Ye Wutian, please accept my thanks." Grandpa's excitement even made him cry. "After selling these crayfish, the debts are finally covered. I finally paid back the money I borrowed from old man Joe. Thank you very much." Just then, a girl spoke up. She turned to Ye Wutian. "Hey, you pervert! How did you do that?" "Those crayfish actually swam to the shore, expecting us to catch them. That's amazing." The girl was still amazed by the recent successful fishing trip. Ye Wutian turned to the people around him and said, "Would you believe me if I told you that I am a superhuman?" Li Wan was skeptical of the guy's words. "You don't have to say anything if you don't want to." The girl realized that the young man's actions were worthy of gratitude. He said in any case. Li Wan ended her sentence with the words, "Thank you." She suddenly felt awkward at the table. "You don't have to thank me," said Ye Wutian. "Just stop kicking me when I give you a massage." Li Wan sharply replied, "If you pull down my pants, do you think I want to hit you? Why do you say such annoying things to me when I'm trying to thank you?" There was a sudden knock at the door. Everyone in the house was surprised. "Who's there? Come in," Grandpa said. Ju's silhouette appeared in the open doorway. Li Wan, her grandfather, and Ye Wutian were greatly surprised by the appearance of the gang leader. "Oh, that smells delicious. What are you guys celebrating?" Joey came into the room. The old man asked Ju sharply, "I returned the money. Why did you come here?" Gang's Ju started to conciliatory speak. "Actually, I'm here to apologize and discuss something about Hu Zi." Zhao went on to say, "You see, as for Wan I think she and Hu Tzu." The girl was visibly nervous. She realized that she was going to be forcibly handed over to the big guy from the gang named Hu Zi. Suddenly, Ye Wutian came up from behind. The guy turned to Joey. He asked, "Are you still trying to set Wan up with your grandson?" Here the guy took the bewildered Li Wan's hand and said, "Let me explain to you today." Ye Wutian pressed Li Wan against him and said unequivocally, "She is my girlfriend." Guy addressed Joe directly, "Make your grandson give her up." "Ye Wutian." Abruptly, the girl cried out. She was startled by Ye Wutian's recent confession. Unexpectedly and invisibly to others, the guy pinched the girl's ass. Li Wan didn't know how to react to such actions of the young man. He only said woof, but she didn't swear. Still, anger was bursting out of Li Wan. She shouted at the guy, "You!" She was offended by such a prank of his. Ye Wuqian turned to the girl and began to explain the situation to her. "Do you want to marry Zhou Huzi? I'm putting on a show so that they won't pester you in the future." Li Wan remained silent. She realized that this would be the best solution to her situation. At this time, Zhou was looking carefully at the guy and girl's embrace. To himself, he thought she doesn't feel uncomfortable in his embrace. It seems like the girl really likes him. After standing there for a moment, Zhu exhaled quietly and decided to leave. While near the door, he said, "Okay, the young ones have their own things to do. I have some things to do too. So I'm leaving." Ye Wutian and Li Wan watched Ju's departure in silence. They were still standing there, hugging each other. After the gang left, the girl shouted at the guy, "Pervert! How dare you grab me? I'll bite you to death!" Walking away into the distance, Ju didn't know what was going on in the room. He was slightly surprised by the noise and shouting he heard as he walked. Thus ended the day. Night descended on the village and on the ladies of Li. The sky was lighted by the month and the stars. During the evening, Li Wan and Ye Wutian sat on the bed and talked. The girl still wanted a boob job. She was teased for her small boobs at school. "Hey, can you really make them bigger?" Ye Wutian began to explain to her the details of the upcoming procedure. The girl asked in response, "Do you need to do the surgery? You're not going to put some silicone in there, right? It's not going to hurt, is it? I don't like pain." Then the guy answered her van air. "In the past, I have enlarged the breasts of the president's own daughter. Dealing with yours is very easy." The girl didn't believe Ye Wutian. The president's daughter? What a braggart. Silently, the boy began to stir the potion in the bowl. He was completely focused. The smell of the potion caught the girl's attention. "What is it? It smells good." "It's not food," said the boy. He poured some of the prepared potion into the palm of his hand. "This is not food," said Ye Wutian. "I need to massage it on you. You ready? I think you should think about it again." The guy decided to get the girl's full consent. Suddenly, Li Wan was silent. She only now realized the importance of what the guy wanted to do to her breasts. The girl even closed her eyes with excitement. She realized that she couldn't wait any longer. Just then, Li Wan said it's okay. She lifted up her t-shirt. "I'm going to pretend to be touched by a dog. Let's get started." A dog. That's how surprised Ye Wutian thought. After thinking for a bit, the guy said, "Then I won't be polite either." He started to smear the girl's breasts. Li Wan felt uncomfortable. She uttered, "Ah," while Ye Wutian was giving her a breast augmentation procedure. The girl was uncomfortable, but she tolerated it. For the sake of breast augmentation, she was willing to endure the discomfort. Ye Wutian felt ashamed and uncomfortable. At this time, Ye Wutian smeared boob enlargement ointment on her breasts. The boy felt awkward as well. Thoughts were swarming in his head. This feeling soft and hard is hard to put into words. Could it be magnificent? For some reason, the appearance of the girl's breasts reminded tightening buns. That's what he thought sooner small buns thought. The procedure went on for a long time. Li Wan and Ye Wutian sat opposite each other on the bed. Outside, evening was gradually coming on. Silence covered the neighborhood. You could hear the croaking of a frog in the nearest pond. After an hour, the breast augmentation procedure was over. The girl lay down and stretched out on the bed. Huh, she repeated tiredly. Moving away from the resting girl, Li Wan said, "I will prepare a medicine for you for tomorrow. Be sure to take it." That's what he said while wiping his hands. Ye Wutian went outside. He was very tired. Rivers of sweat were running down his body. He sought rest in the cool of the evening. Guy began to analyze the state of his health. "This body is very weak. I was suffocating from a simple massage. Looks like I need to make myself some medicine to supplement myself, not to mention strengthening this body. The previous owner of this body died of natural causes. A strong body will be better in unexpected situations." The boy looked up at the sky. Thoughts were still swarming in his head. Speaking of that, something he thought about. There was a full moon in the sky. Looking up at the starry sky, Ye Wutian pondered. "I never thought that controlling my desires also requires skill." A bright day has descended on East Town. Buildings and houses sparkled with cleanliness. In one of the offices, the son came to see his director father. "Dad," according to the reports, "that bastard is dead." That's how the son finished his line. The guy is full of self-importance because of the important information he's given. My father reacted sharply to what he heard. He turned and asked again, "Is he dead? How did it happen?" My father asked excitedly. There was a look of genuine interest on his face. The son began to give details. "I'm not sure about the details, but they say he was killed by a bunch of scum. That's pretty profitable for us." Heh. That's the conclusion the son drew. The father turned to his son and spoke. "Your second uncle doesn't know yet. Don't spread this information. Pretend not to know."
The young man said confidently, "I know what to do. If I see my uncle, I don't know anything. Let's wait and see how events unfold."
The father remembered something else and checked with his son. "Yes. How is your relationship with Xin Yue going? You bragged about how good your relationship was. Don't tell me that you haven't settled on that woman yet." The son replied sharply to his father, "Xun Yue is not like other women." The father pointed his finger at his son and began to say, "If she is like other women, then she will not be back in Ouyang Xin Yue. This step is important. We must achieve the goal. Our family must cooperate with the Ouyang family to raise our status." The boy bowed to his father and said, "I will do my best." A clear morning came to the house where Li Wan and her grandfather lived. Everyone woke up. Ye Wutian sat at the table and leisurely stirred the herbs in his plate. Just then, Li Wan abruptly broke into the room. She had a frightened look on her face. The girl's appearance scared Ye Wutian. "Hey, bad news! We have to hurry up and leave!" With such unexpected words, Ye Wutian dropped his potion bowl. It fell and shattered. The broken bowl really upset the guy. He cried out, "My substance! I spent a lot of time on it." Li Wan shouted, "Oh my god, this is not the time for medicine." "There's a plague in the village. Grandpa wants us to leave immediately." That's the news from an excited Li Wan. Ye Wutian only asked briefly. "Huh?" The meaning of the words the girl said had not yet reached him. "Either way, just run." The girl grabbed Ye Wutian's hand. He clearly wanted him to run after her. "The guy's just now thinking about the plague. Why did the plague come out of nowhere?" As the young men ran out of the house, they were confronted on their way by people in white medical uniforms. The medics were wearing bacteriological defense suits. "Stop!" the medics shouted at Li Wan and Ye Wutian. The young men froze in bewilderment. They realized that they could not escape. The senior of the medics sternly said, "To prevent the plague from spreading, you are in quarantine. Go to the quarantine center immediately." Ye Wutian became very angry. He shouted at the senior doctor, "What? Just because you're stupid? Quarantine everyone indiscriminately." Then the guy angrily added, "We don't even have symptoms of the disease. Get lost." Suddenly, a weapon appeared in the medic's hands. They pointed them at Ye Wutian and Li Wan. The senior medic sternly pronounced, "The resisting ones will be tranquilized." The boy stood looking at the armed doctors. Tranquilizers, he thought. So harsh. Li Wan came up behind Ye Wutong. She told him, "Let's just follow them." The boy was desperate. He didn't know what to do. The medics with guns scared him, but he didn't want to go to the quarantine. Still, the young people agreed to go to the quarantine. They were brought to a large building. There were a lot of medics in protective suits around. The medics opened the door and brought Li Wan and Ye Wutian in. "Stay here!" The boy marveled at the goings-on inside the quarantine. There were many completely different people there. Due to the lack of seats on the benches, many sat directly on the floor. There were several men sitting near the wall. Ye Wutian noted that they looked very bad. It looked like they were really sick. Standing off to the side were several young boys. They also looked unwell. Just then, Li Wan's grandfather suddenly appeared. He came from the side and shouted, "Foolish girl!" The old man approached his granddaughter and began to rebuke her. "Foolish girl. Didn't I tell you to run away with that guy? Why did you come back?" The girl decided to justify herself. Those men came too fast. Then a guy I didn't know intervened. Apparently he knew Grandpa. Old Man Li. For several hours since the plague broke out, the entire village has been blocked off. No one can escape. The grandfather walked up to his granddaughter and started telling her, "What can we do? I am already an old man. It's okay if I die. But my silly granddaughter is so young. If something bad happens to her." Li Wan was upset at such words. All she could say was Grandpa. Li Wan continued to comfort Grandpa. "Grandpa, don't worry. Aren't there any doctors here? Everything will be fine soon." The old man didn't calm down. "A doctor? Humph. If they could solve this problem, they wouldn't have to blockade the entire village." At the same time, Li Wan was standing by the window. He looked thoughtfully at the people on the street. The boy wondered what kind of plague was this. He noticed a group of doctors in white coats without protective suits on the street. Ye Wutian stood there and continued to think. "I heard that the patients had symptoms such as fever, headache, muscle pain, and so on." The young man was sinking deeper and deeper into thought. "I know all about herbs, but not all about medicine. Although I'm pretty good at medical herbs, but I'm not very good at diagnostics. Anyway, I'll just go over there and take a look." Ye Wutian went to the door, opened it, and said to the girl, "Stay here. I'll come out and have a look." The girl grabbed Ye Wutian by the arm. "Hey, don't go outside." Ye Wutian was confused. Here, Li Wan voiced her guess. "What if you are also infected with this strange disease?" Grandpa came over and joined the conversation. "Yes, there's no reason for you to go there. Why don't we just wait?" Ye Wutian thought for a moment. He understood all the risks facing him. The guy was determined not to back down. As he walked out the door, he said, "Relax, I'll be fine." Ye Wutian's remarkable calmness amazed the grandfather, and especially the girl. He opened the door wide to make sure and stepped bravely outside. He didn't know exactly what awaited him, but he was ready for anything. Ye Wutian walked bravely down the street. There, he saw doctors with stretchers. There were also some civilians around. Suddenly, the silhouette of a medic in a protective suit appeared in front of the boy. "Freeze," the doctor said so sternly. Ye Wutian stopped. "Here," the medicine man already said in a more friendly manner. "What are you doing? Didn't I say you can't go out?"
Ye Wutian decided to tell the doctors about his medical skills and knowledge. "I went for a walk. What's the situation now? Any solutions? Tell me if you need my help." The doctor answered the guy. "We have put so much effort and mobilized so much manpower. And yet we can't solve this problem. How can you offer any help? Then the medic finished his speech. Go back inside now. Don't bother us.
The medic's behavior surprised the guy a little. He thought all the doctors in this era are so testy. Turning to the doctor, he said, "Okay, you go back to your business too. Don't pay any attention to me." The doctor said sharply and angrily, "Are you deaf? Didn't you hear what I said? Go back!" Wutian replied judiciously, "I am responsible for my own body. What right do you have to tell me what to do?" The medic was a little dumbfounded by Wutian's determination. He was amazed by the guy's calmness. "Okay." The doctor squeezed himself out. The medic looked at Wutian with anger. "Okay," he repeated. "Okay, if you have the courage." Then the doctor suddenly turned to the side and started shouting, "Quarantine officer! Where are you? This guy wants to escape and spread the infection. Shoot him!" Wutian was surprised by what had happened. "What the hell? I just want to offer help. Now I'm someone who's spreading the plague." Here, the guy said directly to the medic, "You're shameless!" A senior doctor intervened in the conversation. He asked, "Why are you talking so loudly?" The senior doctor approached the medic and Wutian. He wanted to know the reason for their conflict. What happened? The appearance of the senior doctor pleased the medic, who was already fed up with Wutian. The medic hurriedly said, "Old man, you have come at a very good time. This guy says he can solve this problem." The senior medic looked at Wutian carefully. Then he turned to Wei Junji. "The medic, you can't say such things. This young man, according to you, does he look like a doctor?" Wutian intervened in the conversation. "Did he refer to the medic Wei Junji? Isn't that equivalent to hypocrite in Chinese?" "Exactly. And your parents are just geniuses." The medic came close to the guy and wanted to hit him. Wutian dodged. The medic started talking. "What do you care about my name? Do you even have a certificate? If you don't, get lost. Do you want to help? Are you even qualified?" The guy stopped the medic's speech. "Let me ask you." Wutian began to speak. Wutian decided to test the medic's medical knowledge. "Among all the herbs, what effect does the rhizome of Animarina and butterfly bush flower have?" The medic was discouraged by Wutian's question. He didn't know what to answer and only asked what. Wutian decided to brag about his knowledge. "Their effect is to purify the body, to drain the fire inside the body. Perfect for some profane people like you." The medic suddenly became angry. "A profanity-loving man? Who do you mean? Say what you said again." The doctor suddenly grabbed Wutian by the scruff of the neck. The angrier the medicine man got, the more calmly Wutian spoke to him. He continued to talk about the benefits of medicinal herbs, and then cinnabar, polygala root, fusheng, so that your body wouldn't be so weak. Just then Wutian suddenly raised her hand. It was relaxed. It was not clenched into a fist. With a strong but sharp movement, the boy struck the medic's arm. This is how he freed himself from the doctor's grip. After that, the guy said calmly, "No one is more skilled in herbs than me. If I'm not qualified, neither are you." Suddenly, a senior medic walked over. He turned to Wutian. "Hey kid, are you a doctor of Chinese medicine?" The guy, politely and businesslike, replied, "Not really. I'm not a doctor. I'm just familiar with herbs." The senior doctor looked at Wutian with genuine interest through his glasses. "If you're not a doctor, how can you prescribe medicine? Kid, you're too modest." The senior medic took the boy by the shoulder and led the way. This surprised Wei Junzi very much. At this time, the senior medic spoke. "Let me escort you to show you the patient." They entered an ordinary hospital. The interior was unremarkable. Next, Wutian and the medics entered the ward. There was a patient lying on the bed. A nurse was standing next to him. The patient was unconscious. The nurse was adjusting the blanket. Then the patient opened his eyes suddenly. He looked up with an unseeing gaze. The color of his face was an unhealthy gray. The senior medic asked Wutian, "How is he? Anything strange? What do you think about it?" Did the guy answer? Wei Junzi came over and said, "I thought he had something real. But in reality, he's just a charlatan. Why did he have to drag you here?" Wutian was irritated by these words of the medic. He roughly turned around and said, "Can you shut up?" This kind of answer made Wei Junzi angry. He was furious. The medic couldn't find the right words and only said, "You." Wei Junzi's behavior did not please the senior doctor. He thought, looking at his subordinate, "You talked nonsense without thinking. You were frightened by a single glance from him." To himself, the chief medical officer decided, "He's not a very good student. I shouldn't have chosen him to be my apprentice." The senior doctor continued to read the patient's diagnosis on the bed. Fever, headache, muscle pain. These symptoms are common in many cases. We suspect it's an infectious disease caused by some virus. But we need some time to wait for the results of the medical examination. Here, the senior medic's thoughts were interrupted by Wutian's words. "Old man Wu, I have a recipe. You can try it. Give me some paper and a pen." After receiving a pen and paper, Ye Wutian began to write the prescription. He felt the strength and desire to help the patient. The guy quickly wrote on a piece of paper a list of the herbs he needed. Ephedra, conifer, 20 g ginseng, 20 g scutellaria, 15 g longanus, 10 g milk flower peony, 25 g. The guy finished his recipe with such herbs: almond 20 gr, sapochnica divaricata 20 gr. Immediately he gave the finished recipe to the senior medic. At the end, Ye Wutian said boil all the herbs with 3 liters of water in a water bowl. Give the medicine 3 times a day. The recipe is called. Here the boy voiced to the senior doctor the name of his recipe from a whole bunch of herbs. Life-extending soup. Ye Wuqian's recipe pleased the senior doctor. Life extension soup? I've seen that title on the archive before. But there was no recipe there. I never thought that this young man might know the recipe. Here the senior doctor handed the prescription to the nurse and told her, take this. Follow the prescription. Try to make it. The nurse briefly replied, yes. Everything that was happening caused Wei Junzi to be in disbelief. He said life extension soup. It sounds pathetic. But Ye Wutian decided to ignore the medic's displeasure. He was satisfied that he was able to make a prescription that could help save the patient.
The guy turned to the medic and said with amusement, hey, you're not that capable, but your sarcastic comments are top-notch.
Ye Wutian continued to speak to Wei Junzi. Let me ask you, do you have a wife? If you do, please leave her while you can. Don't hurt her. Such words and mocking tone made Wei Junzi lose his temper. He was sinking deeper and deeper into anger. Here, Wei Junzi asked Ye Wutian angrily. You bastard! What do you mean by that? I won't let you go until you give me an explanation. Here Ye Wutian looked at the medic and began to speak shrewdly. Don't you feel your heavy waist and swollen legs, and that it is uncomfortable for you to pee? And your lower body feels cold? Wei Junzi was astonished at these words. Here, the already completely frightened Wei Junzi asked Ye Wutian, how do you know this? Ye Wutian continued to voice his exact diagnosis. Not only that, you also have frequent headaches. You don't sleep well, always dreaming. You often go to the restroom at night. You have a pale face. Wei Junzi was stunned by the accurate diagnosis. He thought impossible. He said everything correctly. But Ye Wutian didn't stop. You have kidney failure, and you have trouble getting an erection. Based on your current situation, you definitely can't satisfy your wife. That's why I told you to leave. The accusations of sexual weakness hurt the medic badly. Wei Junzi shouted, You're lying. I have great sex every night, and my wife begs me to continue every time. Wei Junzi continued to get angry. He said, You stop talking nonsense. A group of medics in the ward began to express their opinions about the conversation. They were struck by Wei Junzi's violent reaction. Snippets of conversations were heard. It seems that Wei Junzi's facial expression proves it all. He looks quite fierce. But then we only saw his appearance, not his illness. Poor guy. A nurse entered the room. She carried a bowl of medicine on a tray. The medicine is ready! The nurse's arrival pleased the chief doctor. He hurried the nurse, hurry up, give it to the patient. The nurse began to pour the healing potion into the patient's mouth. He was very weak and painful. The senior doctor looked at all this with disbelief. He wanted to help the patient, but he didn't know how effective the potion would be. It took time to get results from the decoction. The doctors and nurses waited for an hour. In the past hour, the patient's appearance had improved. The medics leaned over his bed. The doctors were amazed. Face looks pink, breathing stable. The patient appears to be sleeping. The prescription's really working. Who the hell is this guy? Hard to believe he's from this little village. Wei Junzi was most amazed by the patient's dramatic healing. He still believed that Ye Wutian was a charlatan. There were various thoughts in Wei Junzi's mind. He kept thinking about Ye Wutian. So he really is a highly skilled doctor. If that's the case, then my illness. Wei Junzi realized that he could get help from the guy. He said to Ye Wutian doctor, yeah. In general, Wei Junzi realized that there was nothing more to hide. The medic began to talk about his problems. I don't try to hide the fact that my temper today was very rough, because my wife threw a tantrum last night and threw me out of bed. I think you can ask me. Here, quite unexpectedly, Ye Wutian replied categorically, no. Wei Junzi realized that he would no longer have a chance of being cured of his ailment. He turned to Ye Wutian more and more pleadingly. Dr. Ye, I am only 30 years old. I still have many positions that I haven't tried. I can't accept this fact. Help me. When you help me, I'll pay you very generously. Ye Wutian replied to the medic pale face. Powerless bottom. It is your lust and alcohol addiction that is destroying your body. How can this concern me? Next, Ye Wutian continued to say to Wei Junzi, I am not a real doctor. I have no obligation to save other people. I only do what I like to do. In the end, Yewanim decided to leave. In parting, he said that the plague was now resolved. Treat the other patients with the same prescription. Goodbye. All the doctors and medical staff looked after a wutian. They were amazed at his help in curing the patient. Wei Junzi reproached himself the most. I was bloody blind. I shouldn't have been rude to him. I'm so tired, how can I cure my illness? The senior physician recalled the healing that had happened with interest. He thought about Ye Wutian. This young man is amazing, he's incredible. Ye Wutian's help helped in curing patients. Using his medicine, more than 10 infected people were cured. No new infections appeared again. The problem of plague was solved for the village. Ayunani became one of the doctors in the village whom everyone began to respect. Dr. E, I want to thank you for saving the village. That's how one of the villagers addressed him. Yewentian only replied modestly, I told you I'm not a doctor. Life went on as usual in the Li household. It had been a week since Yewutian had helped to heal the plague patient. The time came and the guy realized that he could use his medical skills to help himself. Yewutian decided to strengthen his physical strength. He smeared his body with a special solution of medicinal herbs. He was amazed by the power the herbs brought him. The action of the herbs only made him shout, "Ah!" Yewutian, feeling the coming of strength, encouraged his body absorb everything. The boy felt a sudden increase in his muscles. They began to grow and enlarge on their own. The herbal treatment made the guy into a big, strong athlete. Yewutian thought to himself, this weak body finally becomes stronger after nursing it. Of course, it's not just the upper body. The boy was overjoyed at his success. He shouted out progress. Yewutian was pleased with his success. The young man felt a surge of sexual energy in him. For some reason, he visualized an elephant with its trunk rising. Yewutian thought to himself, Hehehe. Even my useless dick has become more vigorous. Health is important for men, especially the most important part of the body. I should pay attention to it too. Li Wan suddenly came over. Hey, let me give you some good news. There are reporters who want to... That's when the girl saw Yewutian. Li Wan noticed that the guy's body had changed. It had become strong and pumped up. Just then she finished her sentence. To interview you. Li Wan simultaneously noticed Yewutian's strong erection. Immediately she was overcome with shame, horror, and anger. A girl nearby found a bottle and threw it at the guy. You asshole, she shouted at him. What did you just show me? Yewanyu was ashamed and discouraged. There was no way he had expected to be caught by Li Wan. In confusion, the guy walked right up to the wall. My dick stood up for the first time in a long time. For some reason, Yewutian said to his dick, Don't beat him to death. The sun was shining brightly over the Li family's house. The day was in full swing. Just as Li Wan said earlier, reporters came to the village. They approached Yewutian. The cute reporter introduced herself. Hello, I'm Wang Fangxi, a TV reporter. Yewutian stood surrounded by a group of people. There were people from the village, reporters, Li Wan and her grandfather. The reporter spoke, I have been looking for you for a long time to interview you. Could you please give me some time? Please. The guy turned to the reporter and started to answer her. Were you looking for me? Let me not tell you. First of all, I'm not even a doctor. Secondly, I don't have time right now, so leave now. Iwuchin thought to himself, the owner of this body was probably killed by the haters. If I agree to be interviewed, they might find out about me on TV. My whereabouts will be revealed. And with that, the haters will follow me here and kill me. I should be gone by then. Here the guy changed his tone to a friendly one. He turned to the reporter. Reporter Wang, you must interview Dr. Wu. I'm just a peasant. They played key roles. I'm just a peasant. They played key roles in destroying the virus. The reporter wouldn't stop. The villagers said you were a great doctor. That must be you. She held the microphone up to Yewutian. By doing this interview, you gain some reputation for yourself. You don't want to be buried without praise, really. The villagers around him started cheering the guy up. Yes, Dr. E, you should just agree to the interview. After you get fame, you won't need to worry about money. It's a great opportunity. Li Wan also turned to the guy. If you end up on TV, you'll be a celebrity. That's awesome. Yewuchin replied to the girl. Leave me alone, little girl. Don't be a part of this. Li Wan only briefly replied, Ha! The reporter kept harassing the guy. Look, everyone says you're a doctor. You have to stop hiding it. That's when the guy came up with the original answer. He listened to everything what the reporter said and asked, Yes? Then the guy pointed his finger at the reporter and started telling her, If the whole village says you are my wife, then you will be my wife. People were outraged by Yewuchian's words. What is he doing? Flirting with journalist Wang in front of everyone. Shameless. The crowd was indignant. The reporter decided to make the best of the current situation. She took a flirtatious look at the guy and said, You said you want to marry me? Then let me interview you first. At that, the reporter thought, How dare he take advantage of me? Not now, not now. I have to get to know him first.
The journalist's answer pleased Ye Wutian. For some time, they stood looking at each other in silence.
It was the guy who spoke first. You can even tolerate such harassment from a stranger, a woman with no dignity. That's the kind of wife I want. This is how Ye Wutian finished his speech. The conversation going on seriously worried Li Wan. She thought about Ye Wutian. Does he really not need this? Just saying no like that. But how dare he flirt with her right in front of everyone? A senior doctor from the hospital, whose name was Dr. Wu, approached the crowd. "What's going on here?" he asked. The boy was confused. Dr. Wu. Ye Wutian was happy and satisfied to see the doctor. As the guy thought, Dr. Wu would help clarify things for the reporter. The guy approached the doctor with a single question. Did you tell her? Dr. Wu understood the question. Did he check with Ye Wutian about the plague? The doctor began to detail why he shared the information with reporters. You did it. I can't take credit away from you. Your skill made me realize that there is still hope for Chinese medicine. A genius like you could save many lives. Ye Wutian decided to answer directly. I'm not a doctor. I don't care about saving lives. The guy noticed that someone was videotaping. He turned to the cameraman. Hey, you with the camera. Give me the tape. Now. I'll be doomed if this goes public, the guy thought to himself. Not to mention saving other lives. The journalist stood up for her cameraman. Don't listen to him and carry on. We have the right to do that. That's when Ye Wutian rudely replied, and I have the right to say no. Get out of here and leave the tape. Dr. Wu decided to defuse the situation. He said, okay, how about we all compromise and talk? You could become friends. The journalist went to the doctor. Dr. Wu, it's not me. He's being unreasonable. What does he think I'm going to do to him? I can tolerate this attitude and flirting. Why can't he take a moment to do an interview? It's not like it's going to hurt. Ye Wutian was approached by one of the other reporters. Mr. E, it will be good for your reputation if you give an interview. You don't have to go that far. Ye Wutian thought to himself. I wanted to stay in the village for a couple days and then leave. But news travels fast. We need to leave as soon as possible. You, come inside with me. We need to talk. Only you. That's what Ye Wutian said. The reporter got scared. What? What do you want to do to me? Only an idiot would go in there with you. Ye Wutian stopped and said to the journalist, really? Then take a look at your hand. The reporter was confused. She didn't dare to comply with the guy's request and look at the hand. Gradually, the journalist grew bolder and looked at her hand. Only now did the girl notice that her hands were completely black. The reporter was astonished and shocked. Memories of the plague immediately surfaced in her mind. You bastard! What did you do to me? The guy turned around and started to walk away. He said to the reporter, come in if you want me to look at your hand. Otherwise, they might stay like that for life. I'm the only one who can help you. A shocked reporter stood behind him. The journalist pointed threateningly towards Ye Wutian. How dare you threaten me like that? Do you think you are the only doctor in the world? The girl turned around and saw Dr. Wu. She decided to ask him for help. The reporter said in a pitiful voice, Dr. Wu, take a look at this. Do you know how to treat it? The doctor looked carefully at the girl's hands. He couldn't understand what had happened to her. It's... he started to say. After thinking for a while, the doctor said, I'm too old for this. All I can say is that this stain is caused by herbs mixed together. But I can't even tell you which herbs, let alone the treatment.